Well, I'm joined now from Loughborough by Nicky Morgan, Conservative Chair of the Treasury Select Committee and an advocate of a soft Brexit, having been a Remainer, and from West London, the Labour MP, Chuka Ummuna, who is a supporter of Open Britain, a group campaigning to keep the UK in the single market. Chuka Ummuna, everyone said it couldn't be done. She's done it, and she's got through to, the trade talks where everything can get put on the table. You should be congratulating her, surely.
Well, I'm not sure congratulations are the word, but I'm very pleased that we've been able to reach agreement on the three key things: the divorce bill, EU citizens and the Irish border. Well, in terms, I mean, the Irish border hasn't been completely sorted, but I'm glad sufficient agreement's been reached so that we can move to the next phase. But Christian, don't forget, this has involved a radical rewriting of the red lines that the Prime Minister set out in January. She said, under no circumstances would we be in a situation where we were abiding by the rules of the single market and the customs union. Personally, I think that's a good thing. I think we should stay in the single market and the customs union. But the backstop position that the UK government has agreed to today is that if that is necessary to resolve the Irish border issue, then alignment, as it's now being called, will be accepted. The other thing, of course, was we were told we wouldn't abide by the judgments of the European Court of Justice. That's going to happen on EU citizens, and we were told there wouldn't be a big divorce bill to pay, or that she wouldn't agree to that. She's agreed to that, and she's had to do this to move forward. Now, just think about the amount of time that's been wasted between now and then, and we're more than halfway through this process, and we've still got a hell of a lot more to agree on.
Nicky Morgan, I mean, are you clear what this question of full alignment means? Because when I put this to Dominic Raab, because lots of people are very excited about this statement of full alignment with the single market and the currency union, because they think that means a hard Brexit's now impossible. He was really saying I'd got it all wrong and I'd misunderstood, and full alignment doesn't mean that we are tied to every single EU rule. What's your understanding of it?
Well, my understanding is that actually we're not going to get to the bottom of this completely until the trade agreement is finally signed and it's on the table and ready for the parties to move on. And it's always been, I think, in my opinion, the case that it was going to be impossible to completely resolve the Irish border at this stage of the talks until we got into the trade talks. I think that's what's happened. I mean, there's undoubtedly already, there are rules and systems which apply, as I understand it, both in Northern Ireland and also in the Republic of Ireland, and they're certainly aligned, and I would expect that to continue. There might be specific sectors like agriculture, for example, but I think the important principle agreed today is that the whole of the UK is going to be treated as one in terms of the rules that eventually will apply. But this is a significant step that Theresa May has got us to, and the EU have moved as well. To move on to phase two at this stage was really, really important, and I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister insisted on keeping talking and negotiating throughout this week.
But Nicky Morgan, it's very confusing because you, as a Remainer who now wants a soft Brexit, is very happy, and really full-on Brexiteers who'd be relatively happy with a hard Brexit are also very happy. One side has got to be under a misunderstanding here, surely. I mean, you can't both be getting it right.
I don't think so, actually. Well, in politics, you're right. If both sides are getting it right, then normally, I knew as education secretary I was probably in the wrong place. But I think on this, to be honest with you, I think the negotiations have been clearly very difficult, and a huge amount of hard work and determination has been shown by Number 10. And I think that this is phase one. I mean, the point is, as we heard today, we're only moving into phase two now. Those are going to be pretty tough negotiations as well. But I think it's good. I think that Dom Raab, I just came at the end of his remarks. Michael Gove speaking this morning. There are people on My View, actually, who I think there is a sense of, and I think actually out in the streets, I heard your interview with some people from Didcot, and I'd say that would be the same actually in Loughborough, which would be actually relief that we are going to move on and we're going to have trade talks, hopefully a trade deal that is going to be good for our economy, that's going to support jobs, and that's what this is all about at the end of the day. There is no point undermining our economy just to leave.
What do you think, Chuka Ummuna, of this fact that both, hard Brexiteers and soft Brexiteers are happy today? I mean, somebody's got to be confused here.
Well, the fact is, if Theresa May had listened to people like Nicky, all this time wouldn't have been wasted. Nicky's adopted a much more flexible, less ideological position on this, putting people's jobs first. And if she'd listened to people like Nicky in the Conservative Party, the national interest would have been taken forward. But I think the real, and frankly, let's be clear where Dominic Raab and the Brexiteers are coming from. They just want us out at all costs on the 29th of March 2019, regardless of how much agreement has been reached on our future relationship. I think the key thing here, though, is what we are seeing as this process goes along are new facts emerging almost every week that nobody really knew about when we were having the hypothetical discussion during the EU referendum campaign as to what would happen. So that big divorce bill, possibly over 40 billion. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Of course, now that's going to happen. You're certainly not going to see £350 million extra per week going to the NHS. The very fact, actually, Krishnan, that this has impacted on the Irish border wasn't something that people thought of. When John Major and Tony Blair, I remember you covering actually on Channel 4 News their visit to Northern Ireland during the referendum campaign, and people were saying, oh, all this talk about how it's going to affect the peace process, etc., is Project Fear. It's dominated everything over the last few days. It could have held up this whole process. So every week new facts are emerging, and that's why I think Britain, we need to have an open mind as to what happens at the end of this process, because the bottom line is Brexit, in the terms that it was sold to your viewers, is simply proving to be undeliverable. It's not just a competence issue with the government, it's the fact that Brexit in the terms that you bought it is not achievable at the moment.
Do you agree with that, Nicky Morgan?
Well, I think there are always going to be compromises and trade-offs. You know, in leaving the European Union, we've been part of it for 40 years. We have obviously very clear convergence. You know, our rules are the same, which enables us obviously to trade in the single market and be members of the customs union, and obviously in financial services, which is something that the Treasury Select Committee looks at a great deal. That's a huge strength. That has made the City of London important worldwide and able, I should say, to pay £72 billion of taxes towards our public services last year. So I think actually what we've seen in the last week or so is that reality has really set in. I still think we are going to be leaving the European Union in March 2019, but we are going to do it in a way that is not going to undermine our economy, and the government has shown that it's prepared to be flexible, as has the European Union, to get us to the right place at the end of this.
Sorry to cut in, but thank you both very much for joining us, Nicky Morgan and Chuka Ummuna. I'm joined now from Westminster by our political editor, Gary Gibbon. Where does this leave us?
I think you have to imagine what it would be like tonight if there was no sign of agreement, if this whole thing over the divorce bill had been falling apart. In those circumstances, I think you would have seen possibly an unstoppable call for Britain to walk away from the talks amongst Conservative MPs. You could easily have imagined all of these things contributing to the toppling of Theresa May. Neither of those things are totally remote possibilities still, and won't be into 2018, but they are tonight reduced possibilities. Where are we going now? We go to the transition. That will be a very bitter pill for a lot of Tories to swallow, and to trade talks. We know the government, the cabinet, is bitterly divided over whether Britain should, after Brexit, hug Europe close or start afresh, have a more distant relationship. The discussion in cabinet has been pushed off again and again by Theresa May because she fears the bloodshed that could follow. Cabinet will actually start discussing this the week after next, and on Monday, this coming Monday, it's expected a Cabinet committee will start discussing it. And I think the overall feeling as they approach all of this is a bit of relief about today, no excitement about that, real trepidation about the discussions to come.
Thanks, Gary.